Okay, good day once again. This is the third video on the lesson Trigonometric function values of acute angles. So, to be more specific, this subtopic is the trigonometric function values of special angles. Okay. If you would recall, we have special angles in geometry, namely 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 45 degrees. Again, the special angles in geometry, which we can also extend in trigonometry, are the following: 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 45 degrees. They are called special angles in trigonometry because their trigonometric function values may be known even without the use of the calculator. Okay, that is what I would like to emphasize. Even if you do not use a calculator, even if you do not use a scientific calculator, you may find the 6 trigonometric function values of these 3 special angles. Okay. Hence, while you are doing your quiz or while you are answering the examination at home, I am expecting, and I am also hoping at the same time that you will not resort to using your scientific calculators just for you to arrive to the correct answer. Because even if you do not use that, you should not use that, by the way, you will still have to get the same result if you will just understand the concept. Okay, so how do we derive how do we establish the concept of the trigonometric function values of special angles? So let's start with 30 degrees and 60 degrees. Okay, accordingly, you will be given with an equilateral triangle. Now, what is an equilateral triangle? An equilateral triangle is a triangle whose 3 sides are congruent. If the first side is 1 centimeter, the other 2 sides must also measure 1 centimeter each. Correct? Since the 3 sides are congruent. But regardless of the measure of the sides of an equilateral triangle, the angles opposite them must always be 60 degrees each. Therefore, an equilateral triangle is also an equiangular triangle. Again, an equilateral triangle is at the same time an equiangular triangle. Now, according to my teacher in college, it is preferred that you assign a measure of an equilateral triangle, ang yang side, to be 2 units. Actually, pwede siya og 1 unit, pwede siya og 3 units or whatever number, pero to be more precise, then mas dali po siya masabtan, 2 units. So, pero like what I have been telling you always, it's up to you. For as long as you do not violate any rule in algebra, in geometry, in trigonometry, there's no problem. The same answer will be obtained in the end. Okay. Kika nang estudyante nga imong pugngan mo gara. Okay. I had students before nga kani mo gamita sige. Pero the same answer will be obtained. Okay, this is an equilateral triangle. The 3 sides are congruent. So if this is 2, this is also 2, this is 2. Okay, kay equilateral man. An equilateral triangle is at the same time equiangular. So each of the 3 angles measures 60 degrees. That is by dividing the sum of the 3 angles by 3. Since the sum of the 3 angles in any triangle is equal to 180 degrees. So each angle should measure 60 degrees. So 60 degrees, 60 degrees, and 60 degrees. Okay. At this point, you draw you draw, dili draw. You draw a line segment that is perpendicular to the to this side, from this point. Okay, this is actually called a perpendicular bisector. Yeah, it's perpendicular bisector. You draw a perpendicular bisector from this point up to this side of the triangle. Okay. Kay perpendicular bisector man siya, it creates an angle that measures 90 degrees with respect to the side. So, 90 degrees siya dire. Perpendicular bisector, meaning to say, this line segment bisects this angle into two congruent angles. So, if this is 60 degrees, each of these two angles now measures 30 degrees. Kay perpendicular bisector man. And if this side of the triangle measures 2, each of these sides right now will measure 1. Again, kay perpendicular bisector man. And using the concept of the Pythagorean theorem, pinakagasgas, pinakabugbog na kayo nga theorem in geometry and also in trigonometry. The measure of this side, which is actually the perpendicular bisector of the equilateral triangle, would be square root of 3. Kung anong square root of 3 man, that would be, if this side is x, then x would be equal to the square root of 2 squared minus 1 squared. 2 squared is 4, 1 squared is 1. The difference of 4 and 1 is 3. So, x would be equal to square root of 3. Of course, discarding or disregarding negative square root of 3, since there's no such thing as a negative measure of representing the side of a triangle. Okay, this is a square root of 3. I don't think there is a problem with that at this point, di ba? Especially in understanding that one. Okay, rewriting the triangle para mas maklaro. Okay, this is 60 degrees, this is 30 degrees, 2, 1, square root of 3. Okay, before we proceed to the trigonometric function values of the special angles 30 degrees and 60 degrees respectively, take note that among the measures of the sides, 2, 1, and square root of 3, 2 is the largest number. Meaning to say, the side whose measure is 2 is the longest side. Of course, this is the longest side because right after you draw the perpendicular bisector, you have created two congruent right triangles. So in this right triangle here, this is the longest side, or this is the hypotenuse, which is opposite the largest angle. In geometry, it should always be that the longest side is opposite the largest angle. Although when you take the sum of the two other sides, it must always be greater than the longest side. Di ba? Katong ang na-discuss atong first quarter ba to or second quarter. Okay. 1 plus the square root of 3 is always greater than 2. But 2 is always greater than each of the other sides. 2 is greater than 1, 2 is greater than 3. How do you know that 2 is greater than 3? 2 is greater than 1, 2 is greater than square root of 3. How do you know that 2 is greater than square root of 3? Because 2 is square root of 4. Square root of 4 is greater than the square root of 3. Di ba? In the same manner, na kanang 3, kanang number nga 3 is greater than square root of 8 because 3 is square root of 9. Diba? So kanang 2 is greater than square root of 3 because 2 is square root of 4. And square root of 4 is greater than square root of 3. Intermediate algebra. Okay. Now, of these three numbers, 2, 1, and square root of 3, 1 is the smallest number. Meaning to say, this side, whose measure is 1, is the di po siya smallest side. It is the shortest side. The shortest side is actually opposite the smallest angle, which is 30 degrees. The three angles in this right triangle are 90, 60, and 30 degrees. Kaning side nga 1, kaning side nga 1, you can replay the video if you want. Kaning side nga 1, which is the shortest side, 1 being the smallest number among 2, 1, and square root of 3. Kaning side nga 1, which is the shortest side, is opposite the smallest angle, which is 30 degrees. Smallest angle ang 30 degrees, of course, because the other angles are 60 degrees and 90 degrees, respectively. Do you follow? Okay, you can replay the video if you want before we proceed. Now, kanapong square root of 3, kanang square root of 3 is opposite the angle which is neither the smallest nor the largest. Therefore, kanapong square root of 3, you can say that square root of 3 is neither the side measuring square root of 3 is neither the longest nor the shortest side. Napo siya sa tunga. Correct? Napo siya sa tunga po. Since 60 is between 30 and 90. Square root of 3 is between 2 and 1. Since square root of 3 is between square root of 4 and square root of 1. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 1 is 1. Now, square root of 3 is between 1 and 2. Intermediate algebra. Okay. That's it. So, before we go to the concept of trigonometric function values, you have to understand that one. One more thing. Kanang side whose measure is 1 is always adjacent to 60 degrees. Kanang side whose measure is square root of 3 is always adjacent to 30 degrees. Okay. We proceed. Let's start with 30 degrees. Sine of 30 degrees. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. What is the side opposite to 30 degrees? It's 1. The hypotenuse is 2. Therefore, sine 30 degrees is 1/2. You can verify that using your calculator. Sine 30 degrees, you will get 0.5 or 1/2. Kaya kanang mga scientific calculator karon, unlike before, katong sa mga time, karong inyong ang mga calculators karon na mga fraction nga answer na gyud. Na gani radicals, unlike before nga wala jud. Okay. Pero again, do not use your calculator just for you to get these values. It's still better to make use of your skill in trigonometry. But what is next to sine 30 degrees? You have cosine of 30 degrees. Cosine of 30 degrees, that's side adjacent over hypotenuse. So that's square root of 3 over 2. Okay. Tangent of 30 degrees, side opposite over adjacent, that's 1 over square root of 3. But 1 over square root of 3 is not yet a final answer since there is a radical in the denominator. So what will you do is to rationalize the denominator by multiplying both numerator and denominator by square root of 3. Again, the question is, are you changing the value of the number when you multiply 1 over square root of 3 by square root of 3 over square root of 3? The answer is no, since square root of 3 over square root of 3 is equal to 1. And when you multiply a number by 1, it will yield the same result or the same number. So tangent 30 degrees, which is 1 over square root of 3, would be square root of 3 over square root of 9, and the square root of 9 is equal to 3, since therefore 1 over square root of 3 would be square root of 3 over 3. Okay. Next, cosecant of 30 degrees. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Since sine 30 degrees is 1/2, it follows that cosecant 30 degrees is 2 over 1 or 2. Next, secant 30 degrees. Secant 30 degrees is the reciprocal of cosine 30 degrees. Since cosine 30 degrees is square root of 3 over 2, it follows that secant 30 degrees is 2 over square root of 3. Then 2 over square root of 3 is not the final answer yet, because square root of 3, which is a radical, is found in the denominator. So you will have to rationalize the denominator. You will make the denominator rational. Okay, irrational man siya. So you make it rational. You rationalize the denominator by multiplying both numerator and denominator by square root of 3. So ang 2 over square root of 3 will become 2 square root of 3 over square root of 9. And since square root of 9 is 3, so you have 2 square root of 3 over 3. Next, cotangent 30 degrees. Cotangent 30 degrees, by definition, it's adjacent side over opposite side. So, square root of 3 over 1 or square root of 3. Another way of reasoning is that cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. And since tangent is square root of 3 over 3, which is obtained kanina by 1 over square root of 3, so imura nang i-take ang reciprocal sa 1 over square root of 3, that's square root of 3 over 1, or simply square root of 3. These are the 6 trigonometric function values for an angle or for a special angle measuring 30 degrees. Now we proceed. What are the 6 trigonometric function values for angles whose measure is 60 degrees? First, sine 60 degrees. Sine is side opposite over hypotenuse. So lantaw ka sa triangle. Lantaw ka sa triangle. Dapat dili mag-memorize, maglantaw la ka sa triangle. Kung malimot, you go back to the basics. You don't use your calculator. Pila man ang sine sa 60 degrees? That's opposite over hypotenuse. What is the side opposite of 60 degrees? The side opposite to 60 degrees is the side measuring square root of 3 over hypotenuse, which is 2. So sine 60 degrees is square root of 3 over 2. Asa man ang square root of 3 over 2 dire? Dara, ang square root of 3 over 2 is equal to cosine of 30 degrees. Di ba? But pasabot di ay, cosine 30 degrees is equal to sine 60 degrees. Because, again, sa ganito, they are co-functions. Sine, cosine, they are co-functions. 30 plus 60, 90. Indeed. Next, cosine 60 degrees. Of course, ang cosine 60 degrees would be adjacent over hypotenuse or 1/2. Diba? 1 over 2. Ang 1 over 2 kanina is equal to sine 30 degrees. But pasabot di ay, kanang cosine sa 60 degrees is equal to sine 30 degrees, which is 1/2. Okay. You follow? Then, you have tangent of 60 degrees. Ang tangent sa 60 degrees, tangent is defined as opposite over adjacent. TOA. Opposite side of 60 degrees is a side measuring square root of 3. Adjacent is 1. So square root of 3 over 1 or square root of 3. That would be equal to cotangent 30 degrees. Both of them are equal to square root of 3. Two things which are equal to another thing are equal to each other. Who said that? Abraham Lincoln. And then, ang mga reciprocal, ang reciprocal sa sine 60 degrees is cosecant 60 degrees. Since sine 60 is square root of 3 over 2, therefore, cosecant 60 is 2 square root of 3 over 3, which is equal to secant 30 degrees. Ang secant 60 degrees is equal to 2, since cosine 60 degrees is equal to 1/2. The reciprocal of 1/2 is equal to 2. It follows, therefore, that secant 60 degrees is equal to cosecant 30 degrees. Why? Because, again, they are co-functions. Secant, cosecant. And then, tangent 30 degrees. It's equal to cotangent 60 degrees. Both of them are equal to square root of 3 over 3. Two things which are equal to another thing are equal to each other. Okay, that's the 6 trigonometric function values for special angles, 30 degrees and 60 degrees. Question: kinahanglan ba mag-memorize? The answer is no. Categorically big no. Ngano mang dili man kinahanglan mag-memorize? Kung nakalimot ka, mag-drawing lang kag angle. Right triangle whose measure would be 2, 1 square root of 3, angle measure 60 degrees, 30 degrees. And then you derive. Kung ako yung pangutanon, mag-memorize, no. The primary reason why I chose to take mathematics in college was that I hate memorization. Dapat, saan naman siya? I-familiarize. Naputoy joke sa Facebook nga, dili mag-memorize, mag-familiarize. Pagabot sa exam, hala, familiar. Wala na i-answer. But that's actually not the point, because you don't need to memorize things just for the sake of answering a test. Diba? Next. 45 degrees. Diba? There are 3 special angles. 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 45 degrees. Kung ang atong gamiton sa 30 degrees o 60 degrees, we use an equilateral triangle, and nagdrawing ta og perpendicular bisector sa 45 degrees, we will be using an isosceles right triangle. What is an isosceles triangle? An isosceles triangle is a triangle with 2 congruent sides. Opposite the 2 congruent sides are the base angles, which are also congruent. Kunya, kung that is isosceles triangle. Kung isosceles right, isosceles na siya at the same time right pa jud. Okay. So this is congruent. These 2 sides are congruent. So if this is 1, this is 1. The third side, which is the longest side, opposite the largest angle, is square root of 2 by Pythagorean theorem. Since the 2 sides are congruent, opposite the 2 sides are the base angles, which are also congruent. So each base angle must measure 45 degrees. Nganong 45 degrees man? Since the 2 other acute angles must measure 90 degrees, kay ang ilang sum kay they are complementary. The sum of the 3 angles is 90 degrees. Since the largest angle already measures 90 degrees, both pasabot, the other 2 angles when added will be equal to 90 degrees. Since the 2 sides opposite them are congruent, it follows that the 2 angles opposite them are also congruent. Tag 45 degrees po siya. That's an isosceles right triangle. Okay. Using this figure, you can now find the values of the 6 trigonometric functions. So you have sine 45 degrees. Ang sine sa 45 degrees, same definition, side opposite over hypotenuse. That's 1 over square root of 2. 1 over square root of 2 is not yet a final answer because there is square root of 2 in the denominator. So you multiply both numerator and denominator by square root of 2. So 1 over square root of 2 will be equal to square root of 2 over square root of 4. Ang square root of 4 is equal to 2. Therefore, sine 45 degrees is equal to square root of 2 over 2. Sir, asaan ang among i-consider? Kanang 45 degrees kanang nasa ubos or sa taas? Parehas ra. Next, cosine 45 degrees will be equal to side adjacent over hypotenuse, which is 1 over square root of 2 or square root of 2 over 2 lang gihapon. As you can see, equal ang value sa sine 45 degrees and cosine 45 degrees simply because sine and cosine are co-functions. Dayon, ang ilang mga angles when added will be equal to 90 degrees. And their angles are equal. The angles assigned to them are equal. Next, tangent 45 degrees. Side opposite over side adjacent. That's 1. 1 over 1 is 1. Cosecant 45 degrees. Cosecant 45 degrees. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Since sine is 1 over square root of 2, di ba? Sine is opposite side over hypotenuse, 1 over square root of 2. So, kanang cosecant 45 degrees is square root of 2. Ang secant 45 degrees, which is the co-function of cosecant 45 degrees, is also square root of 2. Another way of reasoning is that secant is the secant and cosecant are co-functions. Secant is also the reciprocal of cosine. Since sine and cosine 45 degrees, sine 45, cosine 45 are both equal to square root of 2 over 2, it follows that their reciprocals, cosecant and secant, are also equal. Square root of 2 lang gyapon. Tapos, ang cotangent of 45 degrees is equal to 1, which is the reciprocal of tangent. Cotangent is also the co-function of tangent. Tangent 45 degrees is equal to cotangent 45 degrees. So these are the values of the 6 trigonometric functions for 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 45 degrees. Again, kinahanglan ba memorization? The answer is no. Dili kinahanglan mag-memorize. Kinahanglan ba mag-calculator? Again, the answer is also no. Kung mag-calculator mo, you are just cheating yourselves. Mura na ka-gut cheat sa imong kagalingon, ana. Diba? Mura ka nag si Gerald. Joke lang. Okay. Thank you. More videos the next day.